everybody, this is Ted Forbes from The Art of Photography, and welcome back to another edition of Photo 3's. This is the show where we find three things that are related in the world of photography, and we break them down, we check them out, and we see what's cool. And today I have something very cool for you, and I want to talk about interpretations. And interpretations is a concept that I discussed on this show a while back, and we haven't done it in a while, and I think it's definitely worth revisiting. And generally on this show, we have kind of taken one photographer at a time and broken down their style, looked at their work, done some critical analysis, and we've generally looked at one view and one voice and one style. And I think this is Photo 3's today is a great way to do the opposite of this, which is to take one subject and see how three different people have actually interpreted this subject. The photographers we're going to look at today are Robert Mapplethorpe, the always awesome Tom Burrell, and finally a gentleman by the name of Chuck Close. And in particular, the interpretation that we're going to look at today is the still life, namely we're going to look at sunflowers. Now, I thought this would be a really interesting thing to do because traditionally, I think throughout the entire history of art, the still life, botanicals in general, these are always awesome objects that tend to be a wonderful breaking ground of study for any artist or photographer to explore and to try to find their own voice. And what's really interesting is to see how, you have one object that is completely interpreted three different ways, and that's what I mean by interpretations, and I want to go through each one of these. First up, let's look at Robert Mapplethorpe. Now, Robert Mapplethorpe was an amazing photographer, kind of a controversial career, and he was kind of a wild man himself, but did some amazing botanical work, did some amazing figure studies. A lot of what he was reaching for as a contemporary photographer had its roots in classical art and Greek and Roman influences, and you see that here, but with a much more modern spin on it. And one of the cool things about the Mapplethorpe image is the fact that you have this hand holding up the sunflower, and this is going to be very much different than the other two interpretations that we're going to see of this. The way the hand is holding the sunflower, the way the sunflower is starting to wilt, there comes a lot of personality drawn into this. It almost looks like an excerpt from an old master's painting, the way the hand is, the gesture that's expressed there. And even there's a subtle reflection in whatever the backing material is there with the hand that adds a little bit of lift and a little bit of motion to this, which is completely different than the other stuff we're going to look at. Second up, let's compare and contrast that with Chuck Close and his interpretation of the sunflower. And Chuck's is more dead on, but it definitely has Chuck's style to it. The way it's very harshly lit, the bright light coming from a source just off the center on the front, the way that the petals on the sunflower are slightly out of focus, and the way that even the back petal of this is slightly out of focus. All this happens on a black background. If you're familiar with Chuck Close's work at all, this is a style that he interprets when he does photography. He also is a painter, but his photography has this look to it, and I think that really you're seeing the artist's voice come right through loud and clear right here. And it's a different way of interpreting the vision of the sunflower. And then finally, I want to look at the work of the always awesome Tom Burrell. Now, Tom is a photographer who had a lot of success in the late 90s, mainly with these botanical studies that he did. And I love the way that, for me, his work is not only rooted in the past, but it also has a nice contemporary spin on it without being too much. And he draws a lot of expression out of something as simple as a sunflower. And the sunflower I've picked of Tom's work is this one, which is a really odd view. It's a really interesting specimen of the sunflower. But right here we have, much like the Chuck Close, it's a dark background with the bright light at the front. But the sunflower itself, most of what we see are not the petals, but the center of the flower. And the petals are almost sticking back, like the wind is blowing, or this flower maybe even a little bit freaked out about something. But much like Tom's other work, there's an enormous amount of personality and charm that comes out of this, and I find Tom to be just an exceptional photographer. Interestingly enough, there is a relationship here because Tom Burrell he began his career as Robert Mapplethorpe's printer. So anyway, once again, we can see the variations on here. We started with Robert Mapplethorpe, who had a very classical interpretation of the sunflower. We rounded that in with Chuck Close, who had a very personalized spin on shooting a sunflower. And then finally, we have Tom Burrell's famous example too. I know this may seem simple, but it is three interpretations of the same subject. Anyway, once again, guys, it's been another edition of Photo 3's, and I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Later.